Warsaw today is Friday, 18 August. It will be fine but cloudy in the evening with highs of 21 degrees Celsius or 69 degrees Fahrenheit for our American listeners. Sunrise will be at 5:39 a.m. and sunset at 8:12 p.m. We are on the 18th day of the Warsaw Uprising, and apparently it is going down between Churchill and Roosevelt, but we will get to that later. Otherwise, what else is happening today?
Thanks for that, Philippe. Yes, we will talk about that a little bit later. That's going to be Roger's thing. But first off, we're going to hear from Roger. We never get to start with Roger, so that's what we're going to do today. And he's going to tell us what's happening today on the ground.
Well, one significant bit of damage on day 18, on the 18th of August 44, was the almost complete destruction, actually, of the royal castle in the old town of Warsaw. This was the royal castle had been originally constructed in the 1600s. It had rich history behind it. It was where the Constitution of 1791 was all signed into law and so on. So it had a really rich history as the sort of seat of the Polish kings. And of course, the Germans had taken that askance during the occupation. There had been plans to destroy the castle as a sort of symbol of German dominance over Poland. It was supposed to have been destroyed. As it was destroyed or partially destroyed in a bombing raid on the 18th of August. And that was very symbolic, profoundly symbolic of the sort of wider destruction of Poland and what the Germans saw as their mission, which was to destroy this state, this entity that had, as they put it, as Himmler put it, had blocked their way to the east for 700 years. So a really quite symbolic episode of destruction on this day.
Yeah, of course, because they see it as a humiliation, don't they? I mean, they can accept that Paris may survive, even though they gave orders for Paris to be destroyed, but they can't accept that Warsaw can survive as a cultural entity as much as anything else.
Yeah, I want to jump in here to just mention something about the Royal Castle, which is what I haven't been in a really long time. So I managed to go back again early last year, and you were basically told about these beautiful eagles that were in the throne room, and that recently one had been found in Canada. So the plundering had gone far beyond Europe, and these original parts from the royal castle are being found in Canada. It's just incredible.
That's crazy.
This is because the whole area, of course, was later rebuilt, wasn't it, according to the UNESCO plans. So, I mean, it was completely destroyed eventually, but has been rebuilt since. So, and definitely worth a visit. Absolutely beautiful.
I totally agree, Claire. I definitely recommend people to go to see. But listen, what else is happening on the ground? You've got a couple of bits of information, haven't you, Claire?
Well, I just thought it was worth noting that they're under almost constant bombardment now. It's really almost 24 hours, but not all of the shells are exploding. So there was an occasion on the 18th when a Karl shell didn't explode. And this is a heavy German mortar shell, 600 millimeters, and it falls onto the site of the Adria nightclub in central Warsaw, and it went through several floors. It even reached the basement, but it didn't actually explode. And I think we talked earlier, didn't we, about Zoe seeing a shell land near a small boy trying to sell shoelaces that didn't explode. And the Home Army are absolutely brilliant at running in to defuse these bombs and, of course, to recycle the materials because they are absolutely desperate. They don't have enough ammunition of their own. So a large percentage of the Home Army's resources is now recycling enemy weaponry that hasn't detonated, which of course is very dangerous. So they send in, fully trained demolition expert soldiers to go in and undertake this. And from that bomb on the nightclub, they managed to extract about 250 kilograms of TNT, which is enough to make 25,000 grenades. Yeah, it's absolutely huge. And those grenades are one of the most effective weapons they have against the incoming tanks. So this is quite one of these shells is a significant contribution to their resources.
I think we have to just to reiterate. Sorry to interrupt you there, Claire, but reiterate the size of this shell, the Karl artillery piece. The shells for it, as you said, was 600 millimeters, which is in old money is 2 feet across. So imagine the sort of the diameter of the bullet, if you like, of the shell itself, is 2 feet across. I mean, it's an absolutely vast thing. So hugely explosive, and then obviously this one's a dud. So you get that 250 kilograms of TNT. It's huge.
Didn't it take 4 or was it 6 people just to load one of these shells?
It would probably just to lift it, I imagine. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge thing.
So you can see how it would go through huge floors. I mean, this is how you imagine, don't you, the Cafe Royal nightclub being hit, where they're having parties in the basement and dancing. And these are the sort of kit that can go through all of those floors on the ground and still go down into the basement. But on this occasion, thank God, didn't explode. So yeah, 25 material for 25,000 hand grenades from that. But even that, it's worth thinking about that process as well. It's not easy. So there were large numbers of women, men as well, but largely women who weren't serving in the firing line on the front line, were in basically bomb-making factories, which are largely in basements under the ground, where they are redeploying the TNT from captured shells like this one. And that might involve having to pulverize it into powder and then packing it into whatever receptacles they had. So that was glass jars, or they had these tiny little square metal tins that used to hold cleaning products. So they would pack it with this captured TNT, and they could produce several dozen explosives every day, every woman. But again, this is incredibly poisonous work, very appalling for your health. You're in very trapped environment. There's little in the way of ventilation. It's obviously very dangerous, because if you are hit, the whole factory is going to go up. But it's also poisonous because the TNT itself is poisonous. So Zoe, the woman that I have followed through the Warsaw Uprising, she is delivering food, drink and medicine supplies throughout the uprising. And on one occasion, she was bringing a supply of flour and eggs to Dr. Sofia Franio, one of her friends who was always working in the demolition area. And Franio is now running one of these bomb-making factories in a cellar. And when Zoe arrives to deliver the supplies, she sees that her friend's lips have turned a dark blue, and all of the women in their team, their skin is going grey. And this is the slow effect of the poisoning from the TNT as they're doing this recycling work with it. And there's not much for it. I mean, Dr. Franio, Zoe's horrified, and Sofia Franio says to her, I'm as healthy as a horse. You know, she doesn't want to stop anything getting in the way from them recycling this material to make arms for the people on the front line. She's not as healthy as a horse as well, of course. But she says that women can always manage. And Zoe sort of agrees with that one, actually. But she is desperate to see what she can do to help. And Franio says one of the few things is if we could get milk, if we could drink milk, that would help to dissipate. I mean, they're already on a sort of system where they're taking turns, they're going out to do other work. But milk might help to ease the symptoms, but of course at this point it's absolutely impossible. There is no fresh goods, there's certainly no milk across the whole of Warsaw, so they just have to carry on. So how are these redeployed material being put into hand grenades and other weapons? How are they being used, Alina?
So yeah, I mentioned a couple of episodes back, probably most likely at the beginning of the series, about the little pasta building, so the smaller telecommunications building. Now, the Germans today are trying to make their last attempt to relieve the outpost in this building. And the German infantry tried to advance from Ale Ujazdowskie, so one of the major roads leading in and out of Warsaw, towards the pasta building. And the whole point of this is to catch the Polish insurgents off guard, which doesn't really work because they tried to storm the building, but each attack was met by machine and handgun fire from the insurgents. The insurgents basically hid themselves on the upper floors and the roofs of the buildings and flanked the street, and they basically bombed the attackers with these grenades that you just spoke about, Claire, until they gave up and pulled back indefinitely. So the little past building at this point is still surrounded by the insurgents, just ended up as a trap for the German infantry. I'm going to move on very, very briefly to some of the Allied airdrops. We'll be hearing a lot about this over the next couple of weeks. So on the night of the 17th and in the early hours of the 18th, Major Jadwiński, who's the base commander in Brindisi, sent 3 Polish Halifaxes, and he didn't alert the British that they were going to be dropping supplies. And due to poor visibility, only one Polish crew, which I'll come back to in a second, carried out the task, and the other planes came back to the base fully loaded. So this one Halifax that set off for the Campinos regions successfully dropped their supplies over the Kabacki forest, which is a bit of a distance away. So here is our issue, is that each passing day helping Warsaw proved harder and harder. Without the help of Stalin, without the help of the Soviets, this is going to be an impossible task for the Allies. Just a side note here that Brindisi is the easiest way for allies to do drops from Italy. Unfortunately, they have to fly over a lot of enemy territory, over Hungary, over Bulgaria, over parts of Poland, over Slovakia, and it would have been much easier, as I mentioned before, that if Stalin gave permission for the Allies to land on Soviet territory, to be able to finally able to refuel, gain their bearings, and continue on. And talking about Stalin and the Allies, the British authorities are getting involved. This is what Philip alluded to earlier. Roger, might as well tell us what Churchill's position is currently right now.
Well, this issue is of supply to the insurgents in Warsaw is quickly developing into a sort of major rift between the Allies of the Grand Alliance. And Churchill writes on the 18th, writes to Roosevelt to try and coordinate some sort of response to Stalin's suggestion that this was a rising by adventurers and bandits, and it was something that he wouldn't get involved with and didn't want to help. And Churchill's note to Roosevelt is quite telling, because he talks about the inaction of the Soviets as an episode of profound and far-reaching gravity. So this is quite almost undiplomatic language in that sense. He's really quite critical of the Soviets. But what he does is to suggest to Roosevelt that they actually try and adopt some sort of a common approach, that they script a response to Stalin that could be signed by both of them, in the hope that might break that impasse. He says, better by far to have two messages and a joint message signed by both of us. And then he suggests that they try and agree on the wording. So in that sense, they are trying to put up some sort of united front against Stalin's, decision for inaction. But of course, this all wastes time. This is another couple of days of diplomatic correspondence in which, at the same time that Warsaw is suffering, every day is bringing more bombing raids. The fighting is intensifying. And we're stuck in this diplomatic impasse. So it's sort of an interesting and rather telling moment.
Well, that's all for day 18. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you'll tune in tomorrow for day 19. And I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's been giving us 5-star reviews on their preferred listening platform. It's been amazing. We're gaining more new listeners from all around the world. And remember, Brits, you're outdoing the Americans at this stage. Americans, let's get more listeners on board.